Thanks for listening to the Next Level podcast. This is a short one, but a powerful one. I always love the opportunity to talk to Ken about emotional intelligence. This is a thread of conversation that is woven throughout our Next Level Leadership framework. When we talk about what it takes to lead in a hope-filled, relationally centered, heart-forward way. Emotional intelligence becomes kind of the practical application of what that looks like relationally for leaders. And it's such a word that gets tossed around without a whole lot of substance at times. And what we want to do is a series of episodes to really add some meat on the bone, so to speak, of some substance around what is EQ, how does it apply to you. So hopefully you enjoy this introduction of emotional intelligence. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Next Level Leadership podcast. Today, here with my partner and good friend, Ken Edmundson. So this is a topic that we're not the first to talk about. We didn't invent, we didn't discover. It has been well studied, well researched, but it is one that we can't get away from. It's one that's central to our writing. It's central to our leadership development. It's central to our day-to-day lives. And so it is very much worth us talking about and bringing back to the forefront, not only today, but probably something that we have referenced often and we will continue to reference. And this is the subject of emotional intelligence. And I know over the course of your career and certainly in mine, I have heard that term referenced a multitude of times in a multitude of ways. And it's one of those kind of, I guess, could be considered one of those business jargon kind of terms that people throw around and don't necessarily know what they mean by it when they use it, how to apply it. So not that we're going to fully correct or set the record straight with all that today, but did want to at least offer some thoughts and considerations around what we mean when we're using that language and how people could more accurately appropriate that into their leadership, into their lives. So I guess I'd kick it off by asking you some of your own experience and really some of the history or origin of emotional intelligence, how you got introduced to the subject and then became kind of a student of that subject in particular.
Well, you're right. It's a huge topic, subject. It's like the air you breathe. It's with you everywhere. It really does. You carry your emotional intelligence with you everywhere you go. I would have to say my introduction to it came from way back in the 70s, before the word, the term, and the whole study was even really brought to the forefront. When one of my first performance reviews, is my boss says, you don't connect with people correctly. He went on to say, you walk into a room and it's like you don't pay attention to what's going on in the room. You just you don't seem like you're aware of how you're presenting yourself. Now, he was kinder about it than that, but when I walked away, I still didn't know, how do I fix that? What do I do? What he was really talking about is my lack of emotional intelligence, or my lack of self-awareness, and really all of that. Had I been aware of emotional intelligence, I could have connected the dots. So, but the idea, the topic of emotional intelligence really came to us really in the 90s. It's the first time we heard the term, when a couple of psychologists used that term. They actually called it social intelligence at the time. It wasn't until Dan Goleman at Harvard actually began to define and use the term emotional intelligence rather than social intelligence. And he defined it as these 5 areas or 5 realms that we interact with every day, all the time, whether we're with someone or not with someone. So the whole idea really didn't come about as a formal process until the 90s, but it has absolutely taken over as probably the most effective and powerful coaching tool. There are many things that in coaching high-performing executives that are wired in, built in. You can make them aware of it. Emotional intelligence is the one thing that can change. It can grow. It can get stronger. And so, just to add to that, emotional intelligence is, in simple definition, is one's ability to be aware of their own emotions, how their emotions are affecting them, how their emotions are driving them, how their emotions are having them respond to things, and how to observe and be able to effectively respond to the emotions of others. We're all driven by these emotions. So the 5 realms, the 5 areas, and then within each area there are 3 skills we learn. So that's where I began to learn about it, but when I really started to study it and use it was probably in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it is a powerful tool.
I think the distinction that you made is worth drawing out a little bit more of. There are certain aspects of what forms our personality that don't change much. We tend to look at those through the lens of traits, which is a whole nother conversation. And we
can measure those.
Yes, the traits that can be measured, intrinsic motivators. How we make meaning.
What people would call nature nurture, how we're naturally wired, what nature gave us, and then what we assume or put together is, some people call it life script, but what we're all impacted by our environment. That's nurture. So there was this big discussion for a long time about what's more powerful, nature or nurture. The reality is it depends. It just depends. But what we call it, and I've really have come to appreciate this, emotional intelligence is kind of the bridge that connects them. It kind of is the connector for both. I mean, or put another way in a visual, if you've got nature, nurture, the circle around that, and the perimeter around that is emotional intelligence.
How that gets expressed. I think I've described EQ to some degree as our user interface. It's like the website of our personality. It's what people feel when they experience us. I mean, we've had the experience. I've had the experience where someone says what's wrong, and nothing may be wrong, but the way the energy, the experience, the expression, your body language is signaling something that they're picking up on at all times, whether it's right or wrong. But so our EQ becomes this kind of the website of our personality that can either be really productive relationally, or potentially confusing or disruptive relationally. I like the bridge language because it seems like, in part, emotional intelligence has a significant relational outworking. Like it's part of what makes connection and relationship and forward progress possible. I don't know if you'd agree with that. So I hope you're enjoying the conversation. I wanted to take an opportunity to make you aware of something that we are extremely passionate about. Next Level Leadership is our framework for leading and growing mid-market companies. And 2 times a year, we invite people to apply. If you're an owner, an executive, or a leader in a mid-market company, to apply to participate in one of our Next Level Leadership cohorts. This is a 12-month experience with 10 to 12 other executives and owners where we guide leaders through this framework in depth and hands-on in what we call the journey out toward organizational alignment. These are the tools, the tactics, the operating system needed to build a profitable, sustainable business, and complement that with the journey in, which is the integration of the heart and the relationship and the emotional aspect of leadership so that you can build a healthy organization and remain healthy as a leader for the longest period of time. If that's of interest to you and if that would support you in developing your ability to lead into the future, then would love for you to consider joining us. You can learn more by clicking on the link below, and we'd love to talk to you about what it would look like for you to participate. Thanks a bunch and enjoy the rest of the conversation.
I do. It's another term we use often with an executive. It's what we call boardroom presence. It's the ability to, in this case, to walk into a group of people. My former boss, that's what he was saying, is you don't merge into a group. It's kind of like you go perpendicular to the group. You just kind of crash in. You know people like that. Think of someone in your circle of influence or relationships or work that oftentimes will enter a discussion and try to dominate it, or they will be off topic, or they'll come into a situation that perhaps a different sense or emotion ought to be shared, and they come in with a joke. Maybe it's something that is the group is relaxed and enjoying it, and somebody comes in with something. Well, let me tell you something really bad. Don't want to get too specific about that.
Not name names.
It's not name situations, but the idea is being aware of yourself and how you're influencing the group, how you're merging into the group, and how others are responding to that. And we work, fortunately, and that's a real privilege to do this, we work with high-performing executives, and we talk about this a lot. We haven't named those 15 skills, and we probably should do that, but of the 15 skills that we talk about a lot for a high-performing executive is assertiveness. Assertiveness is not aggressiveness. It's not passivity. It's my yeses are yeses, my nos are nos, and people know you mean what you say, but not in an egotistical way, not in a mean-spirited way, but they trust your assertiveness. And that's emotional intelligence requires a balance and assertiveness. With that assertiveness, got to be empathy. Empathy is a skill. Empathy, as you say, is not sympathy, but it's the ability to relate to the other person's issues. Yeah, attune to the other person's issues. There's got to be impulse control, which is the third one. These are in no particular order because they work together. But impulse control, you've heard this about perhaps someone you've worked with. Whoever spoke to them last, that's what they think, or they're making a decision based on a group who's influenced them. Impulse control allows people around you to trust that you're going to make the right decision with the right information at the right time. It doesn't mean you're not quick to make decisions. It doesn't mean you linger forever and ever to make a decision, but you're not impulsive. And the last one's optimism. Believe it or not, being optimistic, just being positive, even in difficult times. So those 4 skills are 4 emotional skills that you can learn. They can grow, they can change. Being aware of those 4. That's just 4 of the 15 that we talk about.
Yeah, and I think what's when we refer to people, a lot of times we refer to somebody who has high EQ, and I think a lot of times what we may be connecting with when we experience that with somebody is a sense of self-awareness. Emotionally, they know where they are, and they are at least curious. I think sometimes people maybe mistakenly think that EQ is like the ability to read somebody. I'm good at reading people.
Yes.
It's like that's
some superpower,
right,
or a magical power.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I mean, it's being curious about, instead of assuming I know where you are emotionally, like you seem sad or you seem upset. Anything I can do, it's like a curiosity about where other people are, to attune or be aware of where I am and to be aware of where they are and be curious about that. That emotional self-awareness, I think that's probably one of my favorite of the skills, or at least one that has moved the needle for me the most in my relationships. The more emotionally self-aware, and then subsequently self-expressive, just the ability, how impressed we can be when somebody's really clear in what they're describing. Going back to that website analogy, it's like if I can show up and describe the landscape of what I'm experiencing in a way that you can connect with and go, oh, I know what that button does, or I know where you're guiding me. I can tell where this is headed, or I can see where you're leading me. Then that brings more opportunity for relationship.
It's not a language. It's not a language. We're not teaching you magical words, or we're not learning magical words to, well, I know what to say to this person if they feel that way. It's not going to give you that. That's not what emotional intelligence is. it is the ability to understand what's around you and relate to it in an appropriate way. And the biggest derailer, and this might be a clue for someone to look for, to me, of someone who has not developed their emotional intelligence or not aware of it. Some people do it quite naturally. They really aren't even aware they're doing it, but the one thing that really seems to kill it is ego. Ego will really subvert most of the skills. And if you know someone who's very egotistical, their opinion is matters to them and should matter to everybody else. They want to talk over. They want to make. They want to really be superhuman in front of everybody. That's probably someone who is not aware or not developed any emotional intelligence. And
can you say more about how the ego, how that happens, how that diminishes your EQ with the relationship?
It certainly diminishes your emotional self-awareness.
Right.
It certainly changes your self-regard. It diminishes your empathy. Your assertiveness is overcharged. You're aggressive. You're probably inflexible, which is another one of the skills. But it
not your reality testing.
Well, reality testing
right.
and problem solving,
Right.
which are two of them that go with impulse control. But reality testing is I'm always right. I can't possibly be wrong, and if I am, it's your fault or something changed. So reality testing, impulsiveness, really are all. That's why I say ego just really. It's a virus in all of them. Yeah. So
there's some element of integrity in that, I think.
Good point.
Because it's like, if I can honestly express and pay attention to where I am and what I have, what I can do, what I can't do, what kind of help I need, what questions I ask. Because if ego is sucking all of that energy out because I have to present myself in a particular way, then that is going to be diminishing my ability to show up with integrity, of saying, I don't know, I need help. That's a good idea. I like that. I'm not competing with you. I'm able to be more collaborative, more open to possibilities. So
Well, let me offer this and kind of close this short podcast offer. Think of someone in your circle of influence or circle of relationships that you're drawn to. They have a natural wisdom. They have a natural. They're confident and comfortable in who they are. They don't need to be supported or validated by the group. They're not isolated. They're not aloof. But everybody's glad they're there. Everybody feels connected to them. Everybody wants to hear from them, whether they have a title or not. That is probably a person who, knowingly or unknowingly, has a lot of emotional intelligence. It is a skill that we can improve and enhance constantly, regardless of our age.
We often say leadership is relationship.
It is.
And I do think one of the key skills to strengthening the relationship in our leadership is through EQ. So to your point earlier, it is some of the most developmental coaching we can do to find a way forward for ourselves when we're feeling stuck, or people aren't responding to our vision, or they're not moving and cooperating in a way. There's likely some disconnect, I would imagine, in how we're interfacing.
Well, we wrote a book years ago called Listen, You're Trying to Tell You Something. It's really about how you talk to yourself. We all do. And we have these what we call ego states that we talk to ourselves in, not to add to. But when the language that we need to be using when we talk to ourselves is emotional intelligence. That is, to me, has become the language that when you talk to yourself, this is what you talk about is how does this impact me? How does it impact the other? And then we just work our way through the 5 realms and the 15 skills. And you'll find yourself being heard more. You'll find yourself being more confident. You'll find yourself being more at peace with the decisions you make. I don't want to make it sound like this is nirvana, but it's a skill if you're going to thrive in life. IQ gets you, as they say, gets you through school. EQ gets you through life.
And as we pointed out, it can be learned and developed for the rest of our lives. Statistically, we point out in some of the research, 55 tends to be the age where it can often diminish if you're not
We become
receptive.
brittle. We call it being brittle. You get brittle. I'm
Rigid.
not interested in your opinion. Not interested in what you think. I'm not interested. I'm not going to do it.
Immovable.
When you hear somebody like that, they've quit learning. They quit changing, and their emotional intelligence has shut down. I just not going to listen to that anymore.
So this, if nothing else, hopefully serves as a quick introduction and encouragement to anybody listening to dedicate some time and attention to better understanding and knowing their own emotional intelligence, and knowing that it's something that can be measured and developed that might be integral in your own leadership development. So we'll come back.
Good.
And dive into those.
We ought to take each skill and really go through each skill.
Yep.
Be a good next step for us to talk about, because as we pointed out, it's a big deal. Okay, good.
Thanks.